Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
I want to welcome you guys out today to episode 167 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name is Chris Hollifield. I'm the host. This is my show. Thank you so much for checking it out. And as I introduce you to people here in Salt Lake City that are doing some really, really cool things, I got a great show for you guys today. I had the opportunity, Ryan Prince and myself, we went over to the members only lounge at City Home Collective and we sat down with the owner and founder, Cody Derrick. We found out his story, kind of what got him involved in real estate, what got him involved with design, and what led him up to starting City Home Collective, what City Home Collective is all about, and why he believes that Salt Lake City is the best city to live in. And I cannot agree with him more. I mean, this is an awesome city, and it's especially this time of year. I know I've mentioned it on previous episodes. This is when I'm like, man, I love living in Salt Lake City. It is a beautiful time of the year here in the city. I want to, of course, mention Crucial Fest 5. I want to mention that before we get into the interview. Crucial Fest 5 is coming up June 18th through the 20th. Crucialfest.com is where you can find out about this event and find out about all the bands playing it, the schedule. You can buy your tickets, wristbands, crucialfest.com. Thank you so much, Exigent Records and Crucial Fest, for your constant support of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Make sure to check it out. Support these guys. Connect with me. I'm on Twitter and Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, really all the social media networks. Drop me an email. Call up the voicemail, however you want to reach out. I'd love to hear what you think of these shows as I talk to some really cool people. Speaking of talking to really cool people, I'm going to quit talking. So I'm going to jump into the conversation that Ryan Prince and myself had with Cody Derrick at the Members Only Lounge at the City Home Collective here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Do you have like a name for this room? You were calling it
the Members Only Lounge.
The Members Only Lounge at the City Home Collective. So, I mean, you have to be, I mean, not everybody gets to come down here.
Yeah. You're special.
So I'm special. How do you become a member?
Basically anybody that hires us for our services, honestly. So all of our clients. So we do design work, real estate sales. So first and foremost, we're a real estate brokerage. So when I talk about clients, it's literally having like a space, not just for our clients to come together to have a drink and kick it with each other, but really a place to have almost more like a platform for people to be able to share their own talents. So we have a lot of like super fucking creative individuals that are part of the collective. So our clients, when I talk about clients, I'm talking about architects and designers, well, everything, right? Artists, musicians. So if there's any people that are doing anything that needs a space so that they can be rad in that space, then we offer the space to them.
So tonight you got off to a flying start here. We got Chris Hollifield in this space being awesome.
Ryan Prince.
You set the tone here.
Cody Derrick.
With creating this thing. You guys, what you're not looking at here, what you can visualize in your storybook minds, is the swankiest lounge Salt Lake has to offer that you haven't seen yet. And we're about to have drinks with friends, which is another thing you said was on the table, right?
There we go. Are there pictures up of this anywhere that I could put on the website, or is this so people can kind of get an idea?
Yeah, it's
of where we're sitting.
Yeah, there are some photos. I can send you a couple of things.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that. You know, I want to sit here. I want to find out about you as an individual. I want to find out about the City Home Collective, what it is, even. You know, not everybody's, I'm sure, familiar with what you have going on here. First of all, I kind of want you to introduce yourself a little bit. Who is Cody Derrick?
Yeah, so I'm the founder. It was a company that I dreamt up. And created based off of what I feel like are just my own personal passions, which is real estate, design, architecture. So I started selling houses right out of college. I got my real estate license like right after I graduated from the University of Utah.
What year are we talking? If you care to date yourself.
No, I'm bad with dates. So I graduated from high school in 98. I went on a mission from 98 to 2000, came back from Cordoba, Argentina in 2000. Finished college probably 2 years after because I had clapped out of a lot, like AP classes in high school. And, so I went to the Salt Lake Community College, went to the U. Probably it was like 2002 because I've been doing this for almost 15 years, selling houses. So yeah, 2001.
There you go.
So, anyway, I just wanted to get into real estate because I was just really excited about houses and I didn't know, well, to be completely honest, I had considered interior design, but I was closeted, like Mormon, gay. So I was really scared, I think, maybe not even on a conscious level.
To brand yourself in that market?
To just like be an interior designer. It felt like a gay job to me, like because of weird stereotypes.
And you just weren't like interested in.
Did you not want people to know that you were gay?
I didn't even want myself to know.
Okay.
I hadn't even like had that conversation consciously with my own like scared little brain, my heart.
Well said.
So anyway, that's not the point of the story. The point is I felt like being a real estate agent and starting to sell houses was the best way to figure out whether it was architecture or whether it was design or what it was. But I just wanted to like be around design and houses. Like when I was a kid, I used to make my parents stop at open houses and let me like run through when I was like in junior high and didn't have my license. So when I got my driver's license, what I would spend my time doing was like driving through neighborhoods and dreaming about what houses I could like own or design or go into or whatever that was, sell eventually.
That's awesome. I love it.
So for me, it all started with real estate and like spaces, and I could tell you a million stories about like, all that weird shit, creating forts and safe places in your closet with Christmas lights and books so that you could like have a place to hang out. But eventually when I started in real estate, it was like so obvious to me that it wasn't mind blowing that I could be an expert at selling houses, but it still wasn't enough because there wasn't like that thing. I felt like the whole industry had to be revamped. Like the whole industry had to be fucked with and changed and made into something that was more authentic and better. And for me, it came from that other part of my passion, which is where I started, which is like design. Like I just felt like the whole industry needed to be redesigned. So then I took it upon myself to do it.
So you got your real estate license. Where did you just get like a job at a regular realtor place or where did you get your start at?
Yeah, I got my start. I started at a firm called Signature Group Real Estate, just like a
right here in Salt Lake, or
yep, yeah, I started there. It wasn't a good fit there, nice folks, but it wasn't a good fit. So I went to Keller Williams, and Keller Williams was awesome, to be completely honest, because it was a place that they really valued education. So it was really quick for me to become like a teacher, and I traveled to Austin all the time. I went to Austin every 6 months for 5 years, because that's where their headquarters is. So that, I would go and I would either teach or be taught, with like some of the best minds in the industry. But again, it was the same thing where it was like, I was honing this skill set of selling houses, which I don't want to downplay that because I love fucking selling houses. I love selling houses. It's awesome. And there was always something else though. Like there was always this other component of it that's like, well, how is it making your life, the lives of the clients better? How is it changing the community? Like so many other things that it just didn't exist. So that's where, when I say like I kind of started making it up, started making up another vision for what real estate could be.
Which that vision leads into the City Home Collective.
Yeah.
How long ago? I mean, talk about the start of that. Then you just kind of started putting it into action, started putting the pieces together and creating this.
Yeah. So
I mean, has it always been like, has this always been the offices or?
No, there's so many steps along the way. I mean, I'll have to figure out how to edit myself because there's a lot of different things to talk about.
Okay. This is a big leap. There's a wide audience of current Keller Williams and other, realty brokerages. There's a wide audience of their real estate agents who know exactly who you are and exactly what you're up to and exactly what you've accomplished. And you separated yourself from the crowd. What was talk to me about maybe the 6 months surrounding that decision and then the entry into the execution of that decision. Does that make sense?
Tell me the 6 month part again.
So when you decided to step away from your role in that world and step into your own role as in your own, driving towards what became City Home Collective today.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, it was much more than a 6 month process. I feel like
around the key decisions, the exit, the execution of the new one,
Yeah, totally. No window. Okay. So this is where there's no clear answer to that. So every minute of every day, there was something that came up that I felt like could be done better. and could be done in a different way. Whether it was the marketing, whether it was customer service, whether it was what offices, real estate offices looked like, whether it was the way that clients, how much time they spent with them before they would just put them in a car and start showing them houses. It was more about questions that I felt like were very weird and very odd about people's goals. I had clients that would sit down with me, and I didn't want to talk about square footage. I didn't want to talk about how many bedrooms or bathrooms they needed. I didn't want to talk about their price range. All I wanted to talk about was like who they wanted to be as people. I wanted to talk about, where they spent their time, what their life plan was, where this house was going to fit into their 5-year goals. So people were all of a sudden talking about how, she wanted to be, I have all these clients' faces that would come to mind. Like she wanted to spend more time being an artist, right? Like she wanted to, and we weren't talking about the house. So then of course later the house hunt became much more about like, does this place have enough light for you to be an artist in this space, right? It became much more about the big vision for people. And so that dictated everything. That became a different direction for marketing. That became a different direction for who I hired. It became a different direction for everything was when we came up with Love Where You Live, because it had nothing to do with anything other than people just actually loving the space that they were in and how that space affected their lives.
I love it. No, it's extremely well said. I bet everybody felt super cared about, and some people talked your ear off.
It was great.
So you stepped away from Keller Williams and started your own brand, and just everyone you talked to, you approached it from that perspective, and it started to go. There
was never a clean break, which I think is interesting to look back. Like people want to ask that question, right? That you asked, Chris.
Everybody craves a clean break.
Like when was that decision, the big decision, or when was the last day, or when did you move the office, right? And I think anybody that started their own business, or anyone that's had a big, huge idea that's come to fruition, or is an entrepreneur, I think they would speak to, in some ways, the thousands of very small decisions over a period of time that leads to these big impactful moments. Like even if you think about, so for me, it was, if I think back about my branding, it's so weird to think about how far, if you were to see my first business card and my current business card from 15 years ago, you'd be like, it's not even the same fucking person. It's not even the same vibe. But if you looked at the 10 in between, you would see this kind of slow transition of me trying to figure it out, me saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go this direction.
Please tell me you have a collage of all the business cards.
We have them somewhere.
Yes,
yeah.
All right, good. Put it together.
Yeah, everybody pulls them out and makes fun of them all the time.
I want to see the timeline. Like
the big transition, right? When I decided that I had my face on my business card and on my yard signs, because that's how I was taught to do real estate. And when you look at any industry and you ask yourself, like, why the hell have they been doing it like this? And I realized, like, I've got my stupid face on a yard sign in front of someone's house. Like, it's all about me. It's not about them. It's not about the house. It's not about anything other than like me trying to brand myself. I was like, the hell with putting my face on business cards and my own stupid face on someone's front lawn. It's so dumb. And all of these agents do this, right? So it's like,
where do you think that came from?
It came from,
because I mean, you do see that on all real estate.
There has to be like one initial Century 21 group that said, this is what we're doing now.
Well, and no disrespect for the industry, because just like with what I'm doing now, right? Like I'm sure there's going to be there already are a shit ton of brokerages that are copying what we're doing. At some point, we're going to go off and do something else. And this will have been a really good idea, just a little bit antiquated, right? Like I feel like at some point it was probably an authentic, good, new idea to have a face, right? That you connected with people. It was all about, right? Like brand recognition. And in real estate, you are that brand, which is what I got out of, which is, there's so many ways to talk about it. But when we come back to the collective and when we come back to even this lounge, right? It's because it's not about me and it's not about the individual agent. And it's not even just about the client. It's about building community. Right? It's about building a place that's more valuable, not just because of the four walls that we live in and we're increasing the property value, but it's increasing the intrinsic value of a lifestyle, which can be had in a city, in a neighborhood, in a state, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just talking. I'm champagning.
That's a beautiful realtor perspective.
So, I mean, how has it been like, okay, so, I mean, you have tattoos. I mean, your image, it's not a typical Salt Lake City realtor image. I mean, how has that been for you dealing with that?
Super fun, actually.
Okay.
I remember my tattoo artist at the time when I was like getting tattooed, and I was like, I want to go all the way down because I had a tattoo like that came down to here, and then I was putting it down here.
As you got braver.
Yeah. He said, you sell real estate, and it's funny. I wish that I could articulate it in the way that I felt it. It's like your outward expression, grows up only as quickly as your own consciousness can grow up.
Yeah.
And so, of course, as I was much more confident in myself and much more okay with the fact that I was different in Utah, and that I was different in real estate, as that happened, I was also more able to show it on the outside, right?
Well, because the reason I ask that is because, like, my day job, there's a kid there talking about getting tattoos, and I have tattoos all on my arms, and they still have this mentality that you have to have this, blue collar work in a basically have a shitty job if you have visible tattoos. And that's, I think Salt Lake has grown a little bit from that, but there's still a lot of people with that mindset.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't see that, I guess, maybe here, cause I know a lot of the people that work here, have that image. And I was just wondering how that affected anything or that you've noticed.
It's interesting that you say that, maybe I haven't noticed it because I choose not to see that.
Okay.
I'm definitely a believer in, what you look at gets bigger. And so I don't want to look at that problem. So for me, I actually look at all the success stories of people that are just being bold and ballsy and, showing up, whether it's, with a weird outward expression being, tattooed or the way they dress, or actually just having a very different opinion than the vast majority of people, whatever that is.
And I like that mentality.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, business owners, especially business owners, or managers or whatever that looks like, people that are trying to change the world, right? People that have a dream or a vision that is big enough to actually make a difference are going to want to surround themselves with people who are bold enough to share in that vision. And so for me, I feel like, at City Home Collective, I wanted to create a safe place for not just the misfits, but for everybody, right? I wanted to create a company that everybody knew, right? From the very beginning. Like, I want everybody that reads any one of our stories, anybody that is looking to see if they're a good fit to work here or if they're a good fit to be a client of ours. I want them to know that, if they're a misfit or if they're the underdog or if they're, a minority or if they're whatever that looks like, that they're celebrated and applauded and accepted, right? And that just, in my mind, is the only way to have a business or to run a company that's not just a job, but it's actually, a mission or it's a movement. We call City Home Collective a movement that we actually are committed to making change in Utah. And so for somebody to not clap when somebody applies that has tattoos all over their face, they're fucking morons. They're crazy idiots, right? Like when Mark came to apply for a job, I was like begging him to work for me because I knew that he's got a story. I know that he's had to fight to be himself, and I don't want anybody that's
absolutely. How many people work here? How many people do you have part of the team?
There's just over 20.
About 20 people part of the team.
Yep. And that's a mix of, creative, it's a mix of real estate professionals and also interior designers, and a lot of, interesting folks in between, writers, editors, myself.
So it's more than just real estate, like you were saying. So like somebody off the street, say somebody's listening. Let's run down the list of what City Home Collective offers.
Oh shit!
Or is that? I mean, that could probably take up a whole podcast.
Well, where do they
right
find
there.
you? If you're listening right now, get online at cityhomecollective.com.
Yeah, I mean,
get on Instagram at City Home Collective.
Brilliant website. Your website is incredible.
Thanks.
We're talking to Cody Derrick. Just get on Google and get started.
Tuning in, right?
And then he'll kind of tell you what he intends to give you while you bring him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would probably
your feelings,
be the
and he
easiest.
designed you some real estate piece that'll fit your next generation of development.
Yeah, that would be the easiest to just get on the website.
Yeah.
And see.
Really, this kid facilitates your problem. So just tell him your problem, where you want to go, what your budget is, and he gets you there, amongst what other offerings.
So I think that, first and foremost, we're a real estate brokerage and we offer design services. But what I'm also extremely proud of that is the website. So you mentioned that, and it's not because I'm proud of the website. It's because the website was created to support other local businesses. It was to support like what we're talking about, right? Not necessarily the underdogs, but people that have an idea that might not be, may not be as heard or seen as what I feel like it warrants, right? So again, I go back to like interesting folks, like thought provoking businesses, creators, designers, architects, like whatever it is, people in Salt Lake, all Salt Lake based, everybody from Utah, right? Not all Salt Lake, but Utah, Park City, Salt Lake City, everything around Salt Lake City. The whole idea to start this website was to not just have it be about real estate. It was to have it be about our community and to be able to give back and to support people that were doing rad shit in the city.
I think you have a sicker obsession of Salt Lake than I do.
I'm obsessed with Salt Lake.
Why? I mean, you grew up here, right?
I grew up here because I traveled around. I went through what I think everybody went through. I went and spent,
where you're like, screw this city, I got to get out of here, and then you go somewhere else. And
if you haven't been through it, go through it.
You know what? To be honest, I was never really in the like screw the city mentality.
You never went through that. I hate Utah. I hate Salt Lake.
No, because there's too many things about Salt Lake that I've always loved, even if I was in some sort of weird funk or when I was unable to see the rad parts around me. I mean, I grew up loving the mountains. I grew up trail running and, anyway, there's enough things. My family's in Salt Lake. I've always loved Salt Lake City, but I went through I went through a very honest period of my life where I wondered where, I would have the biggest impact. So I left and came back. I was already selling real estate.
Where did you go?
So I went to London for a few months. I had a house in LA that I spent for, almost 3 years back and forth between Salt Lake and LA. I was in Austin a lot. I was in Seattle. I was in Berlin. I was in Portland. So
you've seen it all,
I was in a lot of places, and I always had a home in Salt Lake, but honestly, I was really open and I wasn't jaded. I was really questioning and wondering, where will I have the biggest impact? If I have these big ideas to kind of build community and change things, and I love architecture and I love design, and I'm going to contribute to neighborhoods, and I'm going to do this thing. I knew that I had something to offer. And so it was really interesting for me to get curious enough and to be able to actually have the answer come back to me that I didn't want to go and enjoy someone else's creation. I wanted to create the city that I felt like Salt Lake could be. And so I came back and I jumped in full force and was like, fuck this, if the bar doesn't exist, I'll create it. If the restaurant doesn't exist, I'll make it up. If the house isn't designed perfectly, I'll fucking find the architects. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I'll make it. I'm gonna make the city the place that I want it to be. I used to crave having, nightlife on Sunday evenings, or restaurants to go to, or bars to hang out at, or restaurants to eat at after midnight, just normal stuff, art openings, right? All of these things that I just was like, it's not here. And so as soon as you actually decide, it goes back to that same thing, right? To choose to see the solution and not a problem, right? It's not about people that are losing their jobs because they have tattoos. It's about the people that are excelling in their careers because they can express who they are, right?
Absolutely.
And so for me, I started looking at opportunity in Salt Lake. I started to make sure that I was contributing as best I could. And that's why we started the website, because I had a really interesting perspective. Sorry, I know that I'm talking too much, but
no. I want you to talk.
I had a really interesting perspective selling houses because I would hear why people were leaving and I would hear why people were moving to town, whether it was because they were taking a job or whether it was because they didn't feel like Salt Lake had, what they wanted in a city. And so they were moving out and calling me to sell their house. So I was hearing both perspectives. And for me, I, honest to God, just had the conversation so many times over and over again about how great Salt Lake was. And I knew that as soon as someone came here, because every time people would come, they'd be like, holy shit, this place is amazing. Everybody, people from Paris, people from all over the world would come to Salt Lake and be like, oh, this place is the best kept secret in the world. This place is amazing. And I knew that, and I knew who the individuals were that were creating the community here. I knew the artists. I knew the movers and the shakers. I knew the creative folks that were committed to Salt Lake. And so when I would have someone say oh, I got this really great job offer. We're going to go look at houses, but I don't think we're going to take the job because, Salt Lake doesn't have this or that. So for me to have that same conversation with them over and over and say, oh, you just don't know these people. Let me send you this person's website. Let me send you this link. Let me tell you this person's story. Let me have you get on the phone with this person. That's when for me, I was like, oh, this is such a great opportunity for me to give back and to create the community that I want this place to be, because they don't see everybody and how everyone fits together. And so if people actually do go to the website, they're going to see street fashion, and they're going to see photo shoots of interiors of houses. They're going to see restaurant openings. They're going to see individual profiles. They're going to see a series that we call Place of Worship that's actually not anything spiritual. It's, well, except for how spiritual an actual residential structure can be. You'll see that what it is this really, 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 really interesting mix of what Salt Lake is. And that came from the choice to actually just stay in Salt Lake and create something new instead of just hijacking someone else's something by moving to another city and being like, sweet, I'm glad that you did this in San Francisco over the last however many hundred years.
What's been the biggest thing, like say even over the last 5 years even in Salt Lake? What have you seen the biggest changes?
People's excitement.
With the city or just in general?
People are so stoked about Salt Lake City. I can't go to a coffee shop. I can't go to a bar. I can't sit down with people like you. I can't like throw a goddamn dart without it hitting someone in the face that just wants to talk about how rad Salt Lake is and how excited they are to be here right now. Everyone.
It's going through a cool change.
Every generation. Yeah. Everybody is so stoked on Salt Lake.
I feel like if we were live podcasting right now, we'd have an ovation at that.
Let's clap. If you're driving in your car right now, let's hear a clap, right?
Be too affirmative here, but that was a terrific answer. I feel the same wave hitting my life, and I've got a friend group that spreads far and wide out of this territory, and there's nobody that has bad experiences here. The major vibe they hit is, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how great it was going to be. That may have been my favorite vacation I've had in a long time. Mm-hmm. Great answer. I like hearing that because that's what this is all about, is making sure we broadcast that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, are you an artist at all? Do you create any kind of art?
You've done, he's a designer.
You mentioned
he does,
designer. Okay.
He did FINCA. You got, let's talk, design that on Second South.
Let's talk about that then. Let's talk about FINCA.
FINCA's a great project.
You designed the whole thing or what? How did that come to be?
I was the lead designer. So, like with anything that comes to fruition, it started with a cocktail. Scott.
So let's set this up. FINCA and Scott. Scott's the owner. FINCA's a great restaurant with a great rep in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
They just moved to a new location on Second South.
Yeah.
And we're renovating an entirely new space.
Yep.
And he's facing that dilemma, which faces everyone who's ever taken over a new space and had to make it their own.
Yeah. And
in comes Cody, and here we go.
Yeah. So, in comes me doing exactly what the company offers, which is a dream for me, because sometimes I design houses and sometimes I'm representing buyers and sellers, and occasionally I do both. And so it was fucking great that Scott trusted me to be his representation, to be his buyer's agent when he purchased the building, and also I was able to design it. So so it started with Scott calling and saying that he wanted to just buy me a drink, which
and you had no idea what he was meeting you for. You were just like, okay, we're getting together for drinks.
No, I just loved Scott because we'd featured Pago. Scott's the owner of Pago. We'd featured Pago. I wrote a love letter to 9th and 9th as like a blog post, and Pago was included that we posted. And we had done a couple of other things that he was involved with on our website. And so he basically just sat down, and I love this about business because even for us, we're so online based. Everybody's like so social media, right? And at the end of the day, it still really is just about sitting down and having food, right? Slow cooked meal and sharing a good conversation and a couple of drinks with,
breaking bread
with somebody. Totally.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. Scott called and, just said that he wanted to buy me a drink and talk about what I was doing. And, he never asked for a thing. And it was just a good meeting. I don't even know how long, after that he hired me to represent him on the purchase of the FINCA space, and, interviewed me to be the designer, and we kind of shared ideas and showed him the
How many designers' asses did you kick to get that job?
I don't know. That was never disclosed.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. That was never disclosed, but I got the job. And it was a great job. Scott was great to work with. But yeah, that was, I think, our fourth, restaurant in Salt Lake, which again, for me, it goes back to that, create what you crave, create the thing that you feel like is missing instead of complaining about not having it. And that was one thing that I felt like Salt Lake's, there's a lot of great food and great restaurants. But the vibe, right? Like the design of the restaurant needed to be elevated.
Do you care to share a little bit about your personal story a little bit? I mean, as far as like your family life, I mean, you came from a big family or no? Typical Utah family? You mentioned growing up Mormon.
Yeah. I was born of goodly parents. They're great. I don't know how far into all of it you want to go, but I'm the youngest of 4 kids, grew up in Utah. My parents are great. Like,
have they always been pretty supportive of what you have going on with you? I mean,
my parents are so stoked.
Your entire life, though. I mean, they've always been they're on the sidelines of rooting for you and
they we were filmed shortly after I had come out. It's called Coming Out Mormon was the name of this documentary, and it was for Current TV. It was somebody approached me to film my perspective on coming out Mormon, and the theme was tolerance. They were talking about like exploring tolerance. And so they filmed me and interviewed my parents at the time. And it was...
When was this? Because, gay rights has been a winning cause, and the victory is apparent. It's in sight in... the tipping point's been reached, but this is, damn near civil rights time. We're talking about the 60s for this movement achieving victory, and even still then there's like, give me a time frame on this, because I think that really helps to categorize the risks that you were assuming, especially in this climate and the religious nature of our suburbs.
Yeah. So 2000, like it was the year that I came back.
Way early.
Yeah,
so 15 years ago.
So you came back from going out and spreading a message, and you're just like, "Okay, I really gotta do something different here." How'd that go? Break that down.
I mean, it was hell, basically. I mean, anybody that you talk to that comes out with a really strong religious background, it's I think there's as individual as everyone's stories are. I feel like there's kind of this undercurrent, right? And the message is, at least, I guess I should only speak for myself. It feels a lot bigger and harsher, than coming out to your family, right? Or to your friends. It feels like betraying a church or it feels like literally at the time, like, walking away from a community, from like a place in heaven, right? Like this belief growing up that you literally are walking, not walking away, but like denying or, and even that comes from the perspective of finally getting to the point where you're actually walking away. The turmoil of just figuring out how you even feel about that conversation with yourself is the turmoil, right? Like, what would happen if, like, and so when it comes to my parents, like, of course there were some, tough times, but the truth of that story, was that they were just so worried about me. Like, I'm a pretty optimistic individual, a pretty engaging, happy, excited about life kind of person. And as soon as I started considering what was going on, as soon as I started figuring out that I was actually gay, that I wasn't just making it up, I wasn't telling myself a story, but this was actually who I was, I just got extremely depressed, introverted, lost weight, wouldn't talk, like suicidal, crying all the time.
Was that in the 90s?
What was that?
Was that in the 90s?
Honestly, it wasn't until I came back in 2000. Like, this all happened, I think, because the mission, you're so focused. I didn't have to think about anything else. Like, looking back, there was all these things, right? that we can have a whole other podcast about the signs of Cody Derrick actually being gay from the time that he was 4. But that's a different story. I think I was so focused on the mission, and that's the point, right? Like, you have a mission, right? That's right. They call it the mission. And you're busy all the time, right?
Now say again where you went on a mission.
I was in Cordoba. I was in Argentina. For 2 years. Wow. From 98 to 2000. Yeah, it was great. It was as great as it can be, right? That's another story too. Fantastic people, had, amazing life experience. But then all of a sudden coming home and actually considering, like, okay, so I'm going to marry my high school girlfriend. I'm like, who am I? What am I doing? Like, all of that stuff, when you actually start to have the time and take the time to figure out who you are and what you're going to be, then, the answers to those questions start to surface. And so for me, I was extremely depressed. My parents knew that something was going on. I finally found myself a therapist, which didn't help because it was a closeted Mormon therapist that was telling me that out of all the people that he had met, that he knew that I could fight it, that I would be okay to, turn myself straight, which also really fucks with you. But when I finally, I guess it wasn't even that I had the guts, to be honest, to have the conversation. It's more, at least in my situation, it's being broken down enough. It wasn't anything that I felt like was noble or ballsy to like have this conversation, this honest conversation. Like I was just broken. I was not good. And I remember going and telling my parents that I wanted to talk to them. And they knew that it was like the time for me to talk to them, to be honest and get clear, because it had been months of them.
But they had no idea.
They had no idea.
Yeah.
Or at least I didn't know that they had an idea, or I hoped that they didn't have an idea. And I was like bawling, sitting on the edge of my bed where I was living at the time. And I had a bag packed in the car because I assumed that, I was going to be kicked out of the house. And I couldn't say it. I was like crying too hard and I couldn't verbalize. I couldn't even like tell myself, I couldn't even tell myself that I was gay, let alone like speak it out loud. But I needed to say something. And, my parents, this is like probably getting like, pretty into it for a podcast. But, my dad was like, got down on his knees on one side, my mom on the other side. They were holding my hands, like, just like talk to us. Like they just didn't know what to do. And they went through the list of things that they assumed that it might be. And so, my dad was like, is it cancer? And my mom was like, is Jenny pregnant? Like, and they just went through this list of the horrible things that they've been wondering about. And none of them were, am I gay? And so I finally just had to like speak it out loud, and it wasn't cancer, and my girlfriend wasn't pregnant, right? And looking back on it, it's like, oh fuck, like what a relief, right? Like I'm just gay. Like I love dudes. Who fucking gives a shit? Like I'm not dying. So anyway, they were perfectly supportive. I was dating a guy at the time. They wanted to meet him that night because they wanted to like be included, because they felt so kind of out of the loop and scared and didn't know what was going on. And
that's a fear a lot of people that love you feel. They love you. They want to love you. They just want to make sure that you love them back. They love you so much. Their investment in you is like, it can't be a doubt, like totally taking away. You gotta, complete the cycle of love at some point and validate how much people are caring.
Yeah.
So did you bring him over?
No, actually, he was too scared to come over. Poor Keith. He was like, "Fuck that! Your dad's gonna shoot me in the head."
even though they're like, bring him over.
Keith, sorry, buddy. You're still in the club, but no good.
No, not that night. I actually ended up staying and spending time with them. But it was still. But that was in and of itself was still a struggle, right? Like my dad was the bishop at the time, and I could see him going through his own, kind of struggle to reconcile how he felt about, loving me and also, loving this church. And it's a conversation that, is still on the table for all of us, right? My parents are still, Mormon. My whole family is Mormon. And even in those months following that really honest and beautiful conversation that ended with hugs and tears and, amazing, like we love each other no matter what kind of stuff, there was still just this kind of, there was a lot to work through. And I think probably the most relevant thing to, the reason why it's worth, talking like this, right, is because, some kid might wonder, hopefully that's going away, that hopefully some days people will have to come out because they're straight. Not really.
How amazing would that be, right?
But no, the truth of it was that I was still, even after that, kind of trying to figure out what my place was in the community and in the church. Even though I'd come out to my parents and I was dating this guy, I was still just sad and feeling like I wasn't sure about a lot of things. And so I kind of, up until that point, I was still trying to go to church, right? I was still trying to feed that part of myself. And I stopped. I was like, it's not healthy.
Not feeding. It's not fuel.
Yeah. My mom basically said, like we're either going to have a dead Mormon son, or we're going to have a living not Mormon son, because I was like, I would go to church and I'd come home and want to kill myself. It was awful. It was awful. You can't go somewhere where they tell you that you're not natural, right?
Sure.
So anyway, it was a really, in my mind, beautiful experience that in some ways I felt like was unique to me, because I had heard horror stories of guys, moving away and coming out and being disowned by their families. But I think that because I was so in front of them and it was so raw, and they saw me go from depressed and trying to fit in with a church and then leaving it and becoming happy again and being myself and having a boyfriend and then being like, oh my God, thank God you didn't die. And thank God you're back and you're normal and we've got our son back. Like, I think that because they saw that whole process, they just celebrate it and they were like, please don't go back to church. Like, it's not right for you. Right.
That's a good story because, I mean, you weren't thinking that was going to be their approach, and they're coming from a fundamentalist background, regardless of the sect that you choose. You know, I think that's a thing that people face when their parents are holding some strict beliefs in any genre, you know, and they're trying to move past the tribe. They don't want to be rebuked by the tribe, but it's inevitable because the tribe generally isn't their core support that your family was, you know? So once you like say that you're willing to face the retribution of the tribe and you go in and you honestly like declare what you're about and they give you support in even the smallest ways, it's a lot of fuel in the right direction, you know, versus if they give you absolutely no support and you get kicked out and you just go find your own way. That's also a lot of fuel in the right direction, but it also kind of carries a lot of weight that a lot of people go through. And so you probably like, it sounds like you went through plenty of that. Is there signs that they missed when you were like 6, 7 years old that they should have caught?
That's a really good question. Yeah, for sure. I mean, for sure in some ways, but then also I think that's funny that you asked that, because then on the flip side of that, it's like what is gender other than anything to just play with, right? I just read that in the Times on Sunday. Somebody was talking about like
we're getting to the Times on Sunday. Don't jump ahead. It's on the list.
No, but I think that, you know, there's plenty of heterosexual people that identify as heterosexual or straight, who were doing a lot gayer shit than I was doing when I was in junior high. But yes, there were definitely signs.
Were you jealous of their gay shit they were pulling off, or what was going on?
No, I just wanted to have sex with them. No, I just wanted to fuck around in the locker room. No, I mean, I think even coming back, I think the reason why I identify or talked even briefly in the beginning about the interior design, and perhaps shying away from it, was because that was always something that I was doing, right? Like when I was a kid, I would ask for like paint cans to repaint my room when I was like too little to care about the paint color of my room. And like I asked for new carpet one year because I wanted to like change the vibe in my room and I wanted to go vintage shopping and find furniture and stuff. Like there were definitely signs.
But you don't, I mean, come on, I like to do that kind of stuff. Though.
Yeah, see, exactly. That's why it's not a stereotype.
You know, I'm not,
yeah, totally.
You know, I mean, that doesn't mean I can't enjoy painting my walls.
Totally. Which is why at the time, if they were to look back, there are dots to be connected only because of the outcome, but not because it's actually any sort of sign of anyone's where they're going, right? Yeah, but I know that you had asked this before. I definitely was doing a lot of
self-expression
weird shit
steps. Like, it shouldn't be considered weird shit. It should be considered that your kid is like experiencing a joyful feeling that they designed and executed. In my perspective, like, cause you get refined to that, but you always find your way back to your passions if they're, you know, in a range of areas. And when people say that they had a choice or they didn't have a choice or it wasn't a choice, it was innate, there's always telltale expressions when they felt uninhibited. And, you know.
Well, when I say weird, I'm not even talking about that anymore. When I say weird, I'm talking about like designing bird cages for all of my 100 animals because I wanted to eventually grow up to be a designer for natural habitats for
so the creative animals. Instinct. You're saying that just the creative.
I'm saying the way that came to fruition through me, like, you know, actually having to figure out how to be an entrepreneur because my parents literally, my poor parents, I know were trying to teach me, you know, like work ethic and you can't just have 100 animals because you have to take care of them and these animals need to eat. And if you have a gecko and you have a rabbit and you have chinchillas and you've got cockatiels and conures and macaws and all these, they have to feed themselves and you're a child and you can't make enough money to pay for them and we're not going to go get extra jobs to pay for their food.
So
and you had all these animals.
Well, so they didn't know that it was coming, but they told me that if I could pay for them, then I could have them. And if I kept them clean, well, lo and behold, I created the goddamn zoo of Cody Derrick. I literally I was probably 7 years old. I was so young. I would disappear while my parents were at work. I would walk to pet stores that were too far for me to be walking to, like now, right? At the time, it's like we would just run off for the day and play in the woods and do weird shit. And now it's like, my parents would probably be arrested because we would just leave all day. That's how we did it when we were young, right? So I would walk to pet stores that were like 3 miles away, and I literally went and told them that I wanted a job because I had to pay for my animals. And I asked what the discount would be on the actual animals themselves and on the food if I was to work, and how many hours a week was I allowed to work as a child. Clearly there were child labor laws, and they couldn't. They would just let me show up as a kid, and then they would track my hours, and they would give me free food, for my animals. And then when I would save up enough money, I'd buy a new animal. And then eventually I realized I had to start breeding the birds so that I could sell the babies and hand feed them. And I got incubators, and I would have to eventually, when I got in junior high, provide a profit and loss to my teacher so that they would let me go home to run my business, because I couldn't go more than 3 hours without my baby birds being fed with a syringe and like hot food. Like when I say weird, when I was doing weird shit, I was doing that. That's what I was doing. I was
following
like,
your passions. Yeah. Building a reality around what you wanted to spend your time doing.
I was obsessed. My uncle, my brother-in-law helped me build an aviary in the backyard.
Did you call him Uncle something? But he
Uncle
was like
Jake?
brother-in-law age.
No, he was actually my brother-in-law.
So did you grow up in the city, or I'm imagining a farm here, or
No.
like where?
No,
we just had a lot of.
What did
were on
Uncle
a
Jake do before you lose that thought?
They were on a third of an acre. No, Jake. So Jake is my oldest sister's husband, and they started dating when I was 4. So he's like my brother, basically. Because she's 12 years. Yeah, she's 12 years older than me. But he would come over every Saturday and spend all day long helping me build this aviary that I drew up. I was so excited to, have an outdoor flight.
Okay, so he's like 25, 28.
At the time.
Helping out a kid.
Yeah,
Making
totally.
sure his sister's happy.
They were already
connecting to
married, and
family.
he had no idea what he was getting into. Most people that get into a project with me think that it's going to be as simple as I think it's going to be, and then I want it to be perfect and amazing and the best thing ever. And somehow,
At least you know who you're hiring.
right? Like he stuck it out. I mean, it took a long time. I had a really beautiful aviary. It was amazing.
You're welcome.
Jake was awesome. Thanks, Jake, if you're listening. He was fucking fantastic.
You're welcome, Jake.
What's the craziest like bird? Did you have like a hawk or anything?
No, they were all domestic.
Vulture? Or?
No, they were all domestic. So I had a blue and gold parrot named Bozo that was named after the first African elephant that was born into captivity. So I had read this whole story and had dreamt of, again, designing these natural habitats for animals. And so Bozo was like one of my little inspiration elephants. And so I named the macaw Bozo after that elephant.
Strong. All right, parents, you're forewarned. Watch for your designers as they just come through and just get to the top of their industry.
Don't ever tell your kids that if they can figure out a way to pay for a pet, unless you're fully prepared to have hundreds of pets in your home. Because they were people of their word. I have to tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, being that kid that was like walked back into the sports mall when I was young because I had helped one of my friends sneak in, and my dad drove me home, made me get the $2 out of my allowance, like out of my special drawer where my bird money was.
Now we're talking. That's my dad's style right there. Where's your allowance? If you have enough in there, you can get what you want.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was, like they taught me how to work. I've had jobs my whole life.
Do you still have a lot of pets? Like, are you still? Do you still have a lot of animals?
I just have a pup. I have a dog, Pearl. She's fantastic.
What kind of dog is Pearl?
She's a mutt. She's a beautiful mix, is what she is.
She featured in any advertising print?
She's all over. She's all over the place.
She's all over. If people go to City Collective on Instagram, they're going to see her.
People are actually.
How deep do they have to go in your profile?
You can go to Cody Derrick, and it will be a photo or two back all day, every day.
Now you did
ICK.
your personal Instagram though.
She ends up on City Home Collective as well. Yeah.
There you go. Don't feel creepy about going deep on this, you guys. Just check it out. See what it's about. City Home Collective.
Yeah. She's here every day.
Speaking of pictures, like, who takes all the, do you have different photographers? Cause back to the website again. The photos, they're amazing of everything, of the homes you're selling, of the art, of everything.
Get on your Instagram right now.
Get on it.
Yeah.
Anybody who's on their phone right now, get on City Home Collective's Instagram.
Yeah.
Let's
serious. Who's a mixture of photographers or what?
Yeah. So that's part of what the collective is. To give a shout out to Carrie Jo Fukui, one of our own. She takes excellent photos, but we have a number of amazing photographers. At the collective, we have multiple people that are writers, multiple people that are contributing creatively, so multiple designers, multiple photographers. But you can check them out online at cityhomecollective.com, and they're absolutely incredible. They are what the collective is, right? Like, the collective would be nothing without the creatives. And that's the whole point of embracing and creating something in Salt Lake City, because Salt Lake, in and of itself, as beautiful as it is, as amazing as the mountains are, as amazing as the architecture here is, as amazing as a lot of things are in Salt Lake, it would be nothing without the creative community. It's the creative class that is blazing the trail right now in Utah, and it's fucking beautiful.
What's your favorite real estate piece that you've ever sold, or your the best house you've ever been a part of the process of experiencing in your genre?
Man, there are so
one that stuck out a little bit
top
more.
three, whatever.
Van Cott for sure. I have a really amazing couple of friends who purchased a house. It's a mid-century property. They have become good friends, moved here from Switzerland. They purchased a house over on Van Cott that I feel like is one of those houses. It's one of those residential properties that when you walk into, it's like I mentioned, place of worship is one of the categories, or one of the sections that we feature on our
Where's
website.
Van Cott, if people are familiar with Salt Lake's grid system?
It's over in Holiday. They might not want you to drive by it, for, privacy's sake. But,
All right, there you go. It's in Holiday.
But it's in Holiday. It's one of those houses that does something to you, right? Good architecture. It's like good art. It's like good music. It changes you vibrationally, right? You become something different physically by being in its presence.
What was your role with that place?
I was the representative. I represented him when he purchased it.
Did he have any design themes that he wanted to?
I'm helping him.
I'm helping still.
No, so it was built in the late 50s. I am helping him furnish it, so I'm helping him do some design work. But the house itself is one of those mid-century gems that honestly is holy in and of itself. You go to that house and it makes you, it's like going to a cathedral, right? That you literally like have a physical response to it. You rush to the heavens in a cathedral on purpose, right? The architects wanted you to like look up to God. There are certain houses, this is one of those homes, that you walk into the house and you feel different about the world. Everything is balanced. Things feel right. There's no rush. You want to explore, right? It's just this connection with nature, inside, outside, right? Like, it reminds me of us getting quiet and conscious, like Eckhart Tolle's shit, right? Power of Now. Like, being aware of where we are on the inside and that connection with the outside, and then it disappears. There is nothing in between, right? The skin goes away. There's no membrane. It's all fluid. When you walk into a good house, even a good building, any good architecture, you disappear into it, right? This is one of those houses. That's the first one that comes to mind.
When's the tour? When are we going to check out this place? It sounds so good.
It's an amazing house. I'm happy for them. I'm happy that they get to live there together. They're good people. They deserve a good house.
Do you have like a favorite area of Salt Lake? What's your all-time favorite area?
I have too many. I'm too excited about too many areas. I live on South Temple. I love South Temple. Our office, City Home Collective's headquarters, are here on South Temple. I walk to work many days of the week. The trees on South Temple, the architecture, the diversity of architecture, the historic homes, the history, the Cathedral of the Madeleine, like just the feeling of South Temple and how stately it is. I absolutely love. So I consider South Temple a neighborhood in and of itself. So I love South Temple. I like it that it's accessible. I live in a condo at the Maryland building that I love. And there are also, $5 million mansions next door that, are clearly a different homeowner. And I love that there's space for everyone on South Temple.
Absolutely.
Including our business. I love 9th and 9th. Right. I love Marmalade. I lived in Olympus Cove and I loved running up, Mill Creek Canyon almost every morning. I loved that. That was a really great mid-century house as well. And like swimming in the pool in the morning before the sun came up and it was heated just enough to just like bask in the steam coming up, and then to run up Mill Creek Canyon and, come back in time to see the sunrise. I mean, that neighborhood being that close to the mountains is amazing to me. I love Federal Heights. The architecture in Federal Heights. I run now up Federal Heights just to be in that neighborhood, to be around those houses. I love Federal Heights.
You say run, so you're like a runner. Do you run marathons or anything?
I've run 4 or 5 marathons. Yeah.
Wow.
But it's been a minute.
You're in Chris's vein. I called him the other night and he's like, I'm about to go run. I'm like, well, can I talk your ear off? He's like, yeah, sure. Cause he's a great listener, but he was about to go run. He was like out on the street huffing and puffing.
No, I wasn't on the, well, I'm not any good. I mean, after about, 3 or 4 miles, I'm done.
Will you go smoke Chris through a Federal Heights run? Cause that's higher altitude.
Well, when you talk about neighborhoods and Salt Lake, I think that's one of the beautiful things that people forget about, that like for me, whether it's going up to Federal Heights or whether it's going to City Creek Canyon, I can leave my house. Like I don't drive to a gym very often. I rarely go to a gym. I go sometimes, but, I just do stuff outside. But for me to be able to run out my front door, appreciate South Temple, right? And all the architecture, and run down South Temple and cruise up City Creek, and to be at the base of City Creek in 10 minutes on foot, and then run up a canyon, to me is like, and all before, breakfast, and to get to work by 9 without driving your car again, dog in tow. It's like, that's a pretty good life.
Let's say somebody was visiting Salt Lake. I ask this a lot on the podcast. Is there like something they need to do? Something they have to check out, or what is 1 or 2 things that they definitely have to check out besides all the awesome neighborhoods that you talked about?
The fun part for me is asking my friends what they're into, and helping them see that there's something for everybody, right? Like if people are super stoked about the mountains, of course, we can't even begin to talk about that now, right? And what that experience could look like. If it's dining and restaurants, I mean, we honestly have some of the best restaurants in the country. I mean, the sushi at Takashi is like mind blowing, right? Obviously I'm partial to FINCA, but I was a huge fan of Scott's, Spanish cuisine long before I was hired to be the designer for FINCA. But his restaurants, at East Liberty Tap House and Pago and FINCA and Hub and Spoke, like everything that he's doing is spot on. I also design Palette, and they're doing a fantastic job. I like the vibe there. Again, I'm partial, but that's really great food. So it depends on what people are stoked on. We talked about this earlier a little bit, but the music scene in Salt Lake is so great. And there are so many people that are creating such interesting music. Lord Huron is tonight, down the street, which is great. But like Twilight, right? And Lance and Will and those guys, like they have been creating for so long a safe haven for artists to come and play good music in Salt Lake. So anything you want, right? Mountains, food, drinks, music.
Do you get out to a lot of concerts? Do you go?
I get out and about.
Get as much as you can, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Red Butte. I mean, you can't beat Red Butte. Like if you have someone coming to town that's visiting Salt Lake for the first time, and it happens to be a night that there's a Red Butte concert, people won't ever leave. I have clients who honestly came to town and happened upon Red Butte, or happened upon, the mountains, they all have their story, right? They happened upon it, and they either just didn't leave, or they moved shortly thereafter with the plan to visit for a few more months and then never left. Like, that's one of the nice things about Salt Lake. It sneaks up on people. People come here and just feel like it's home. And if it's the right home for people, you can't shake them, right? They become advocates of the city. It's weird. It's almost like the underdog, right? People want to fight for the person that can't fight for themselves, right? You're a big guy. Like, I'm sure there were plenty of times that you stood up for somebody else, right? The only time I punched someone in the face is when they called my friend a faggot, right? Like, as soon as you have the need to protect someone, you'll do anything you have to protect them. I feel like people become protectors of Salt Lake because Salt Lake has always been the underdog. And I think that's awesome, because there are people like me who want to just preach it, right? To preach about the greatness of Salt Lake, because it needs to be preached about. It's not obvious all the time, but it's great and it's worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're not kidding about those mornings in the summer when you step outside and it's chilly, that barely exists in the summer if you're at the right time, and you hop in the pool as the steam's leaving.
Totally.
I owned my first pool last summer, and those moments you're like, oh, there's magic in the world. There's magic in the world.
Yeah, and floating
like Utah Summer Nights. Are you kidding me?
Totally.
Oh, it's
full
the best
moon
night ever.
nights.
I named them USNs as an acronym.
Utah Summer Nights.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Should be
Hashtag.
It should be its own hashtag
Hashtag
for real.
Do you do much like in like skiing or snowboarding at all? Do you get out and do any of that?
I trail run.
trail run.
That's my bet in the winter as
So
well.
you freeze all winter?
It's summer and winter. I love running in the mountains.
What do you think of the like the bar scene? The
great.
Salt Lake bar scene.
Yeah, it's great, and it's getting better. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite spots to grab a drink that you'd recommend? People listening, like I get people, honestly, people that listen to the podcast. That's why it's even great with what you have. I get a lot of people that are moving to Salt Lake that have reached out to me, sent me emails and saying, I found your podcast. This is a great resource to find out about Salt Lake City, find out about Utah. And that's why, I like to hear what people enjoy, where you enjoy, grabbing a drink.
To all of you, if that just resonated and that's you, go to cityhomecollective.com.
Well, absolutely.
From there.
Absolutely.
God, yeah, there's so many great new spots. Not even new spots. Let me think of, some of the places that I haven't just already plugged.
Yeah. I'm just curious, if any came to mind.
I mean, of course I love Bar X. I also like places that are a little bit unexpected. Honestly, for me, a lot of people, may think it's a bit, stuffy or pretentious, but, I find myself oftentimes with the paper on Sunday afternoons having a glass of champagne at the Grand America lobby.
Really?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Off the record or on the record, I actually don't like the Gibson Lounge, which is their kind of like, supposed to be kind of their like cool, like speakeasy private, bar. There's a huge TV, which I feel like, I don't even know that in the right sports bar there should be a TV with sports blasting all the time. I'm sorry. I know that you play football. I'm
picky about my sports bars too.
Yeah. So to have kind of this cool, like, high end vibe. Anyway, but in the lobby at the Grand America, and the architecture is so amazing to actually like dress yourself up on a Sunday afternoon and go sit, and there's, full menu and have food and champagne and read the Times. It's beautiful at the Grand America. That to me is like this really odd little, unexpected place. I really, I can't say this enough. I know it sounds weird because I just designed it. Maybe it's because it's top of mind. It's the most recent restaurant job that I did, but the FINCA space was designed to kind of have a couple of places in there that you can cozy up and have a cocktail. I've traveled so much, alone in my life. Most of my travels have been like, just going and exploring cities and just kind of being on my own. So I'm always looking for, pubs or restaurants or, diners, bars where I don't feel weird being by myself, places you can kind of cozy up, yeah. A bar that you can sit at, a corner that you can find. And so whenever I'm designing places, I'm always trying to design little nooks and crannies where you can just go by yourself, right? You can take a book, you can, go and just kind of kick it and do work. I do work a lot. And so I'm trying to get out of the house or get out of the office so I can work in places where, I can have a bit of a change of scenery. And so the places that I've had a hand in the city, you'll find little spots where you can kind of disappear, but also feel comfortable and connected, which I think is a pretty good metaphor for Salt Lake as well.
And remind you guys that are listening, you mentioned earlier that when you were very young, you'd find those kind of places and create them, even if it had to be in your closet. And then now we're currently recording from a 1,200, 1,300 square foot space that you obviously designed to look exactly like what you're talking, to create a nook and cranny here and there.
I wish I could record all my podcasts here. Seriously.
Well, you're welcome to come here anytime.
Thank you.
That's what it's for. Honestly, people like you that are making a difference in the city and telling the stories, the good stories. That's what this has been created for, right? People play music here because music should be heard and not, people shouldn't have to be talked over, right? When they're playing beautiful music and speaking from their heart. And so I literally wanted to create this space as a safe place where the artist is respected, whether it's a podcast or whether it's a musician, whether it's a poet, whether it's a speaker, whatever it is. If someone has something to offer to the world, and especially Salt Lake, then they can offer it to the world here. So you're honestly, truly
thank you.
Invited.
Cheers to that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, seriously, cheers. I have a few more questions. I don't know what Ryan.
One more. Go ahead.
Yeah, well,
I'm great. I could talk about myself all night.
Boy.
Apparently,
where would you?
I was all nervous in the beginning, and now I just can't shut up.
Now you can't shut up. Well, let's keep chatting then, right? No, I mean, I'm curious. Somebody who's seen so much change in Salt Lake, what are some things that you would still like to see change about Salt Lake? I mean, what direction would you like to see it go?
Yeah, I just want to see, and some people may disagree with me. I want to just see more people truthfully, not just more people, for the sake of having more people, but I want to see more engaged people. Because we all have those moments, right? Where it's like, it's thriving. It's gallery stroll. It's Friday night. There's art openings. It's like everybody's out and about and you're seeing your friends and there's all these great things happening and there's a restaurant that opened that you haven't been to before and it's just happening, right? I just want to see more of that. Like, I honestly don't feel like Salt Lake's missing anything. I just want to see more of all of the great things that it has. And that all comes from, like actual engagement, whether it's people that are living downtown or just coming downtown or other pocket neighborhoods that are being activated because people are choosing to engage, right? For me, it's a big, I wouldn't say push. I ask the question often of people because of selling houses and designing houses. I want to know if what they want to do in their house, they can do outside of the house, right? And it's just a question. Like, could you watch movies, at the Broadway theater? Could you walk to Tower and watch a movie and let it be more of a special occasion? Should we forego the TV altogether, right? Like, just not because it's good or bad, not because it's right or wrong, but is there a way to engage with the neighborhood instead of doing something in your backyard? And there's a time and a place, right? People want privacy. People want to do their thing. But if everybody that had a home theater dedicated, and again, people that's their passion, I'm a big supporter of people finding their passion and going for it, right? Turn whatever basement into a home theater if that's your fucking passion. But if it's just because you want to have it, imagine all of the people that had something that they used once every 3 months actually showed up in the same theater on Friday night and could actually talk to their neighbors and engage and talk about social change, right? Imagine what could happen if people did what they could do in the house outside of the house. It'd be amazing.
A lot of truth behind that, never really put a lot of thought into that. So often we work our 9 to 5 jobs and then we come in and hide in our houses for the rest of the night and not even get a chance to meet our neighbors. A lot of us don't even probably know the first names of our neighbors. We've lost that as a society.
Yeah. And it's that, and it also can be choosing to find your neighborhood, right? Or your community in a different way.
Absolutely.
Right? Because that's a beauty of living, in our time as well, is that we can still have active, engaging conversations with people that care about whatever it is that we care about, right? Bird breeders. I could probably start a Facebook page and engage with people who are also, building aviaries when they were 10 years old. But the truth is you can find a community, right? If it's food, if it's drinks, if it's agriculture, horticulture, whatever it is, you can find people. And I think that that's another thing that is amazing about Salt Lake, is there are so many people that are so diverse and comes from such interesting backgrounds. And we talked about that a little bit. A lot of the respect that I have for people in Salt Lake is because a lot of people had to fight for what they believe, right? Even when we're talking about like Mormon, non-Mormon, right? It's not really about that debate, because if you're Mormon and you totally believe it, and there's been this current of kind of an attack against that conservative part of Salt Lake.
Every conservative group gets attacked on.
Yeah.
Name it. You're Baptists, you're Muslims, you're a person who's growing through the lens of how you were raised in a close-knit perspective environment. You have to at some point address those issues. And so
totally. So it just breeds people who have had to just look at themselves, or who are in the current process of looking at themselves. And that collective consciousness in Salt Lake City right now is causing Salt Lake to look at itself as a city. Who are we, right? What's our identity? How do we feel about the rest of the world, right? How are we engaging with our mountains? How are we engaging with our land, right? Like there's so much right now that's coming up, I think, out of everybody in Utah, because we've all had to have this conversation with ourselves. I'm constantly having it. We talked about, 15 years ago of having a big conversation with myself. But the more people that look at themselves, the more people there are that are going to be able to participate in the active dialogue, which, is not necessarily, it's not right or left, right? It's not liberal. It's not conservative. It's just a dialogue. And the fact that Salt Lake is talking to itself is the beauty that's happening right now. When you talk about what's happened in the last 5 years, Salt Lake's finally speaking up.
Do you have any other questions, Ryan?
I do.
Before we wrap this up?
I do. I hope anyone's not in a big hurry.
I'm not in a hurry.
The thing that I've recognized through the course of this is, if you started in the early part of the century, 2002-ish, was City Home Collective's vision, and now it's 2015. I know on this last Sunday you hit a plateau and you had your first advertisement in the New York Times, because I'm on City Home Collective's Instagram. Like, oh, you all should have been this whole time. So during the time between when you initiated and the time now, like, the internet was invented and implemented into culture in the mid 90s, and then became really affluently active in like regular everyday business by 2010 ish, like give and take a 5-10 decade swath. And you've essentially grown your business up in the internet's initiative preemie era, now to the point where a New York Times ad is an actual investment in visceral, tangible paper on a one-time basis. And you see most people putting their advertising dollars into scalable, perceived benefit of e-commerce agenda. And a New York Times ad is a scaled, investment in a one-time tangible landmark piece of, actual, paper. So as one industry, as the media dies out, yet still, as I perceive, remains harmonic with the City Home Collective vibe in the New York Times piece, and it was tasteful. I saw it. I really liked it. Versus the way you could have gone and the way you're going. How do you see that shaping, and how did that business come to be? And if you want to talk through like a fast track of your era and how it led to like where you're headed now with that, your current trend. That was my last question, was sort of the themes of how you've grown your vision and how you see it and how you're investing your marketing dollars and how you see those growing. Loaded question. There you go.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I am old school at heart, and as proud of the website as I am, I can't tell you how many hours a day I spend on that website. I love it. I feel like it's a child that was birthed from me. It's like, I love it. We're being followed in 194 countries. We've got about 50,000 unique visitors a month on the website. I mean, it's a popular website. But it's funny, I get all dad sometimes with the agents, like the newer agents that work at the collective. And I remind them all the time that I was the top producing agent at the company, the previous firm that I worked for, and I had no business cards and I had no website, and I didn't want either. And the truth was, I was completely committed to personal relationships. I knew that was the only thing that mattered. And I still feel like that trumps everything. So when other people were trying to figure out how to have a website just to have a website, or to have fancy business cards just because they felt like if they had a business card then they would be successful, I was spending time, having clients over to my house and having drinks. I was spending time trying to support them, asking them questions about what I could do for their businesses. I was actually engaged, having longer conversations about how their life would change if they had the right house, right? And so I actually came to the online game very late. I was always in the marketing game. I was really excited about conveying this new message that I felt like was relevant, but it was always through print, right? I advertised in City Weekly. I had like these kind of what I feel like were very kind of thought-provoking, interesting postcards that I was sending out instead of all the other bullshit that I was seeing. And I knew that when I had a purpose that was big enough to create an impact online, that it would be time. But I was an extremely successful business person long before I ever had a website.
So you lead me into that, to the New York Times article, because you had like an insert piece, So
I'll never let go of print. Honestly, I feel, when I say I'm old school at heart, I still love my design magazines. I love them. I know it makes more sense for the planet. I know it makes more sense financially to order my magazines online, right? And to flip through them on an iPad. I don't want to. I want the experience of the print publication. I want to pour my glass of wine, and I want to get all my lighting right, and I want to light my candles, and I want to sit on the couch, and I want to put on fucking Etta James, and I want to just read a design magazine. I've been doing this for 20 years. That was probably the first clue that my parents missed. I don't feel like that will ever go away. And I feel like there's something to be said for supporting industries that have committed to that, right? The New York Times, the paper, the Tribune, right? People here locally who are willing to print, right? Ugly magazine. We advertise in a lot of places that choose to be ballsy and go for print. I respect it. I think it's beautiful, and it's tangible, and you can hold on to it, and you can keep it, and you can touch it, and you can smell it. And so, part of that, New York Times commitment was to support paper, honestly, to support print, to support the nostalgia of that experience. I joke often, and it's not a joke at all, that I feel like the best 5 minutes of my week, every week, are the moments when I remember that the times are sitting outside my door on Sunday morning, and I fucking get my coffee and it's all ready, and I go, and every morning I know that the paper is going to be out there, and that moment of like, I have a whole like 2 or 3 hours of, I don't even know what's in it, but I get to sit down and relax, and the sun's going to come up, and I have my coffee, and this is my moment. I am totally committed to that. And so whether it's in Utah Style and Design, because we advertise in Utah Style and Design, whether it's the New York Times, whatever place it is, I like the equivalent of the slow food movement in print. I like to be able to take that with me to a restaurant or a cafe or wherever I go, or the park, and actually have a tangible representation of our brand, which makes me feel like it's real, right? Like it feels so real to see your shit in print. I love it. So I'm happy that we were able to get to a place where we can afford to not only afford the talent, but just to be able to afford the time to create a beautiful website, which I love. But I'll never let go of print. No way.
It's beautiful. There's a tear in my eye, man. No, seriously, I think, including...
I care about this shit, right?
No, including myself, I feel like it's like, you get the iPad and you feel like, gosh, you got to get all the ebooks and you got to, do it all that way or you're doing something wrong. But it's like, no, I like that paperback book still, or going into a used bookstore and that smell of books or Barnes and Nobles and looking through the magazines, it's beautiful.
I do want to say that, clearly, if we're happy where we are, then we have to, not just have to be, we get to be grateful for all of the steps that got us to where we are, right? And in talking about the steps that took me from, Signature Group to Keller Williams, and from Keller Williams to kind of wanting to do my own thing, I think it's worth saying, on the record, just how grateful I am for every person, every mentor, all of the individuals, the teaching, the training, all of the people that are doing great work at both of those companies. I feel really lucky to say that I'm extremely good friends with the owners of both of those firms. I get, random messages, text messages from people when they see, kind of our big stuff, our advertising, or when we get the brokerage report at the end of the year and we can see what the profit share is, where we size up to other companies that have been around for a while. It's really nice to get notes from previous brokers, previous owners, and have them congratulate us on our success, and for me to be really, really grateful and really friendly, to the point where, Boyd from Keller Williams actually hired City Home Collective to design their new offices. So for me to see kind of this full circle community come together, where I was able to kind of create this new vision for a company that offers design services along with real estate, and to have the previous owner of the company that I left hire us for those design services, and then for me to be able to, send agents that I feel like might be a good fit to work at Keller Williams, because we have a very small team, and we don't have a lot of agents that work here. So it's nice to see that even in my micro industry within the Salt Lake community, that people are collaborative. And I think that that's another really beautiful point about Salt Lake right now, is that it just is really, really collaborative. People are working together.
Absolutely.
It's also a really good point to bring up to anybody in any industry. If you're looking to surpass your current company, that the way out isn't always an obstacle. The way out is often like a facilitation of your future success as well. Like the collaboration can exist when you know what you're doing and you're following what you're into.
How can people find you? Let's run down that list again. Instagram. Do you do Twitter at all?
So the best way to find us is cityhomecollective.com.
Okay.
The direct line to the company that we pretty much always answer is 801-718-5555. We're also on House. We're on Instagram. We're all over the place when it comes to social media, Facebook. And it's just City Home Collective, CityHome Collective.
And if people from anywhere like what they see there, can they get your design input?
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously for ridiculously bargain fee, but
absolutely. I'm a big proponent of helping the community, helping the world be a prettier place, a better place. So I'm always happy to give tips.
I need to get him over to my new apartment and get some design
You do
tips.
a before and after on the spot.
Let's do it.
It's easy.
Seriously.
I'd love to.
Right?
Let's end with a piece of advice, words of wisdom, a motto or a piece of advice that Cody wants to leave with the listeners.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. I feel like this is not my own, but I feel like the books I've read, the great speakers, the teachers, mentors, coaches, folks that I've had in my life, I feel like a theme that at least stands out to me is that we get a lot further in life when we try to help others achieve their wildest dreams rather than, necessarily focusing on achieving our own. So to ask as many questions and to be as curious as possible about how you can help your friends and family and neighbors and colleagues achieve their big goal. Like, ask your friends what their big goal is and then do whatever you can to help them.
I love it. Thanks so much, Cody.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Ryan. Again, a beautiful spot, beautiful space. People can come here, right? I mean, just in general, I guess
Totally.
Check out the offices upstairs.
Yeah. Yep. Upstairs is open to
and
the community. We'd love to have people stop in and say hello and give people a tour.
I want to thank Cody Derrick for sitting down and chatting with Ryan and myself. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that conversation. And like I said, hopefully each and every one of you gets the opportunity to check out the members only lounge at the City Home Collective. It is a beautiful spot. Like I said, we might start recording. You never know. Maybe we'll record another episode or two right there. I'd love to chat with some more City Home Collective people and find out their story and find out what they're doing and find out why they love living in Salt Lake City. Hey, there's some ways you guys can support the podcast. First and foremost, if you have not left a review in iTunes or on Stitcher Radio, please do it. It helps the show immensely. It helps with the algorithms. It helps boost the show. It gets it exposed to more people. Also, feel free to share any of your favorite episodes with your family and friends on any of your favorite social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Share it with everybody. That's the only way the show's going to grow. Also, like I mentioned before, the show is free, but any donations to help keep the show alive is very much appreciated. You can find out more on how to support the show if you go to iamsaltlake.com/support. One-time PayPal donation is very greatly appreciated, and it helps keep the show alive. And I want to thank those of you that have donated to the show in the past. Anyway, that's going to do it. Episode 167. I'm here every week. Make sure to follow on Facebook, Twitter. That way you can stay up to date. I'm trying to get better with telling you guys everything going on here in Salt Lake City. You guys have a great week, a great evening, and we'll see you guys again very soon.